Big wars change the world. There are big wars, little wars, real wars, and fake wars. Real wars are conducted as a result of a threat to life or liberty, whereas most wars, fake wars, are waged for profit, hubris, or prestige under the pretense of a threat to life or liberty. Regardless of origin, certain wars may escalate to the point of having global consequences. Whether from the silly paranoia that triggered the cascade of events known as World War I, or psychopaths wielding war machines that precipitated World War II, a war with the right mix of ingredients changes the world. The Napoleonic Wars saw the decline of France and the emergence of Great Britain as the dominant power of the 19th century. World War I saw the disappearance of the Ottoman Empire and the decline of Germany as a European power. But perhaps more significantly, events of that era broke the German bloodlines controlling Britain, Europe, and Russia, and relegated the waning British monarchy and peerage to vestiges of bygone power. World War II saw the rise of the United States and the Soviet Union, the US through organic growth, and the Soviet Union through mergers and acquisitions, shall we say. America's dominance of the latter half of the 20th century eclipsed even the British Empire of the 19th. As you suggested, James, it was a period of technological, cultural, and financial dominance not seen since the Roman Empire. And now China wants its day in the sun. It wants to be the next 17th century France or British Empire, but more than anything, it wants to be the next United States. There's just one catch. Wars are expensive, messy affairs with no guaranteed outcome. And for all of its shortcomings, the United States is exceedingly adept at waging war, and its geographic isolation has played no small part in its continued successes. Also, as you alluded to in the last episode, the last time China was a global influence, war knocked it down a few pegs. There is the expression, all wars are economic. All wars have a planned or unplanned economic impact, and well-planned wars have specific economic outcomes in mind. Thus we can form the economy of war theorem. Mass murder plus destruction of infrastructure equals economic gain. And if one is very lucky, economic dominance. So how does one redesign the equation to arrive at economic dominance without incurring massive casualties, debt, loss of infrastructure, and a significant reputational hit like the one Germany suffered after 2 world wars? You look to America, of course, because in the 20th century, we were doing things better, faster, and cheaper than everyone else. We dominated the world after a war ended that we did not start, and by some accounts did not win, but we did participate in it. And America unfortunately lost 400,000 lives. But by body count alone, World War II was less tragic than the Spanish flu, when 675,000 people died. So after World War II, we simply had the good fortune of being the only industrialized economy standing after the world destroyed itself. America changed the equation. We achieved economic dominance without starting a war, without suffering infrastructure losses, and without suffering a reputational hit. In fact, expansive propaganda campaigns ensured that we were perceived as the savior of the civilized world, even at the same time that we were extorting their financial systems. Now, if you are China, how do you design a theorem of economic dominance that avoids direct belligerence and destruction? You find a way for the world to destroy itself while you remain the last economy standing. If you are China, or rather the Chinese government, I say you play to your strengths. Here are some words that I associate with the government class in China. Authoritarian, oppressive, goal-driven, secretive, genocidal, patient, strategic, strategic bordering on the diabolical, and my new favorite phrase to describe government types, pusillanimous paranoid psychopaths. With this set of traits at its disposal, it seems to me that China is well positioned to conduct any manner of warfare it chooses, particularly stealth warfare, given the closed nature of its government ranks and the governmental control of information and oppression of dissent. This brings us to SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes the disease COVID-19 as labeled by the World Health Organization. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has reached figures that are not comprehensible by the human experience. Best guesses are in the $4 to $6 trillion range, with long-term impacts exceeding $10 trillion. For comparison, the United States required 224 years to amass a $4 trillion debt. This economic impact is not from the direct and indirect costs of treating COV patients, but the irrational and disproportionate response by most of the world's nations of shutting down their economies to protect themselves from a virus that would, ironically, shut down their economies. Although China's economy has not been unaffected, it restarted its economy sooner than other nations and will weather the economic storm better due to its low debt ratio and substantial currency reserves. Not to mention that China contains the majority of the world's manufacturing facilities, and that if the world wants to restart, the path leads through China. The mass media are obsessed with the term the new normal, which seems to be part of some insidious plan to condition people to a new way of life that restricts freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and freedom of dissent. A society that would have a remarkable resemblance to contemporary China. Here are some things we know about COV. If the following information conflicts with what you think you know, remember that if you get your news from the television or its online appendages, you are not getting news, but news-like product, designed with intentions other than the enlightenment and free thought of humankind. SARS-CoV-2 did not originate in bats. It did not originate in pangolins, although ancestors of it are present in both. SARS-CoV-2 did not originate in the Wuhan farmers market, although the market was the origin of the Wuhan outbreak. According to Tian Junhua, a researcher who works for the Wuhan CDC, China has identified 2,000 viruses in the past 12 years. This has nearly doubled the number of known viruses in the world. And Mr. Tian claims there were only 2,284 described viruses prior to the work done by the Chinese CDC, and I have found nothing to dispute this claim. Now, there is a gap in the genome between the viruses found in bats and pangolins and the viruses found in humans, leading to the conclusion that an intermediate host may be responsible for the final mutation and transmission to humans. It has also been suggested that SARS-CoV-2 genome contains synthetic sequences. Although such a finding would certainly prove human intervention, it would also be an undesirable finding in a virus intended to be a biological weapon. Conversely, the absence of synthetic sequences does not disprove human intervention. What if the intermediate step between bats and humans was the Wuhan CDC that fine-tuned the virus for human transmission and infection, and then operatives for the Chinese government, willingly or unwillingly, spread the virus to population centers around the world?